What does a bottle cork, a wooden fork, a toilet roll core, and a pencil with a rubber have in common? Well, these are all things that you can use for printmaking, to make prints onto fabric or paper. And if you'd like to know more, then stick around for the next few minutes here on the Virtual Village Hall with myself, Rachel from I Printed That. Now, when we think of it, printmaking is one of the oldest forms of art. We just have to look at the cave paintings, many of which were used making hand prints. Yes, printing, to either tell a story or for decoration. Now, in today's session, we're not going to make something quite as historic as the cave paintings, but what we are going to do is to print onto fabric, which you can then turn into something like a table runner, for example. So I'm going to pop you down. I'll talk you through the fabric to use, the paints, and then we'll have a little play with some of the implements that I've just shown you, and then we can get printing onto our fabric. So first, let's talk about the fabric that you're going to need. So I would suggest using something like a natural fabric with a little bit of weight to it. So something like a calico or a linen, that kind of thing, or just a very nice, good, thick cotton. You will need some fabric paint in your choice of colour. I'm just going to go for black to show you, but you really could have any colour that you want. If you're going for a dark fabric for your table runner, just make sure that the paint that you're choosing is light and also opaque. You're also going to need just a paintbrush and an old plate. Here's an old plate that I chipped, that I keep these because they're so brilliant just for mixing paint on. So you just want an old plate that you're going to be able to put your paint on. I would also suggest just having some fabric as well underneath what you're printing onto. That just gives you a good basis to print. And then the things that you want to print with. So I've gone for a cork from a bottle top. You can use just a plain cork as well for this. I've got a pencil because we're going to be with a rubber, because we're going to be using that to print with. I've got my wooden fork, which we're going to use to print with. And I just want to let you know that I saw this week fabric which was called a fork in the road, printed, which looked like it'd been printed with this sort of implement, or at least the initial image to then digitally print it was, and it was £75 per metre. So just bear that one in mind. You can make some really lovely prints from these. And then also we've got our toilet roll core, which is probably my favourite thing to use. Oh, and also just a bit of string, just to give us a little bit more detail around our corks. So let's get started. Let's just have a play. So I've got a scrap bit of fabric here that I'm going to be using, and we're just going to go in first of all with our cork. So I'm putting my fabric paint onto my plate, making sure it's a nice even coating. You don't want it too thick, but you don't want it too thin either. And actually, to start with, I'm just going to show you, you can get like a little half circle with these, so you don't have to do the whole thing. So you're just going to paint halfway across the cork surface, then nice and firmly make your first print. And I would suggest inking up every single time, unless you want to create that sort of faded effect. Maybe have some which are really solid and some which aren't. And I can print this sort of scalloped edge using this technique, just lining up. Oh, not very well that time. So let's get to practice. Just lining up each one as you print it. It's actually easier if you stand up. I do find to do it. There we go. So that's the basics. We can just print that's kind of scalloped. If you want, you can go for a little polka dot, and I find it just easier to use the plate. It's just a bit quicker. Use the plate as sort of an inking pad almost. Dip your cork on top, ink up each time. This one's nice and quick, and you could do like a polka dot pattern. You know, you can do it in a grid formation, or just go really random with it. Okay, so that's one way you can use a cork. Another way, so this is just another type of bottle top. Another way you can do it is to wrap string around this top to then give you a bit more detail. So what I've done, I've just taken a craft knife, and I don't know if you can see that, but I've just made some little notches where the string can go. So I just show you. So I'm just using the knife to take those notches out, and that's where the string will lay. So when you've done that, I'm just going to move this out of the way quickly. Take quite a long length of string, and you want to leave one end probably sort of about from your finger to your elbow in length. And with the bit that's left, just wrap it round a couple of times, making sure to pass over that. This is just going to secure it. Then you want to take the string, bring it up over that notch, and you would have also made a few other notches. So I've got one on the other side. And then just use the length of string that we measured out first, just to wrap that round, and that will secure that in place. So then you can go on to the next one. Otherwise, they do tend to slip around a bit. Then carry on twirling that one round. So you can have just that kind of X or that kind of cross pattern, which you can see here. Or if you want to, you can add a few more. Like so. And then when you get to the end, you're just going to tie that into a really nice tight knot. Make sure that stays there. So a nice tight knot. And then I tend not to cut it off because I like to reuse the string. So what I don't use, I can just wrap round, and that will just stay there while I'm printing. So let's do a little play around with these. So again, we're going to grab our paint. I need to load that up a little again. And I've got one bit that doesn't want to stay. All right, but that's fine. This is hand printing, so I'm not after perfection. And then you want to take the string end and just ink it up. And as it's touched the side as well, you'll end up with sort of part of a circle. If I show you, then you can see what I mean. So you see there, we've got part of that circle. So if you just take a piece of tissue, so just every time, just make sure that you don't let the paint go around the sides, because otherwise you'll end up with that. And you can just make these sort of prints. So they almost look like snowflakes. Imagine those white on a black fabric. That would look amazing. That would really stand out. Okay, so that's how you can use a cork. So do your halves, make scallop lines, do the whole thing, make some polka dots or just random dots, or wrap string around it, and you can make this, have this either cross, star, X, snowflake effect. Okay, so that's the cork. Then let's have a go using the wooden fork. So with this, I'm using the same paint, and the back of the fork I'm going to just paint just the first kind of, probably just about, not even a centimetre, depending on what you want. You could just paint tiny bits, or you can paint the whole bit. Really does depend on your aesthetic. So have a little play around with those, with how much paint you want to put on. And then it's just a case of putting it down to make these lovely little triangles. So ink up every time. And you can either lay them next to each other, so they almost look like stylized sort of fir trees. You can make rows of them. You can print some backwards, some forwards. It's quite a fun one to do. The print that I was talking about earlier on, it had, I think it was just 3 prongs to it, but it was literally just that, just randomly spaced about. Let's try it without inking up. So you can see it fades as it inks up, so you really do need to ink it up each time. Okay, so that's what you can do with the fork. If you wanted, you could just use the prongs. Just make tiny little dots. Yeah, have a little play, have a little play. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at, move these out of the way. Next thing to look at is the pencil. So a really simple one, and one that you can do with children as well. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that the rubber or eraser on the top of your pencil is nice and flat. So you could either cut it off, if it's not new, if it's been used before, you could either cut it off and then just on a piece of paper, just rub until you end up with a nice flat surface. And then it's a similar thing. Make sure there's a lot of paint, not too thick, not too thin, good even coating. Take the rubber. Let's do a practice one first. And there we go. So we've got some little dots. Maybe you want to add to your polka dot design. But again, black fabric with white, and they become snowballs. Put them together. And you've got like a flower design. Maybe a yellow in the middle. Again, black fabric, white petals of a daisy with a yellow middle. So just a really simple way to make some prints. And it's quite addictive as well. I just want to carry on, fill the whole thing. Okay, and then I want to take you over to using the toilet roll core. So to find another bit more fabric. Okay. So if it's probably a craft toilet roll core, then it's probably going to be a little bit more substantial, but you can also do it with these ones. So I've loaded up my paint. And I'm just sticking the one end into the paint. And I'm just using that to make these circles. Now you could overlap them. Or like the spots, you could have a polka dot image, make a polka dot print. You can put these together. So really just have a play, see what you like. Then these are also brilliant just to use for lots of other shapes. So if you sort of make it more of an oval shape, just put some more paint on. Then we can make like a chain link, perhaps all the way down the centre of your table runner. You can pretty much make any shape you want with these. So I've got here, by just folding it over at sort of each at the middle, at the centres, and then bringing those in, making the points touch each other like so, you can end up with a sort of a free, it looks quite like a freestyle sort of cross. Oh, hang on, I didn't do that one properly. Let's pop that one in there. Well, it's not wanting to ink up that one. It worked earlier, typical. There. I think it's because maybe I've used it too many times. But if you kind of get this kind of lovely sort of cross shapes and X's, which have worked really well too. And then the final thing that I just want to show you with the toilet core toilet roll core, you can just use the side to make some really nice stripes. So I've inked up again. And then just using the side to make these stripes. And you can then mix them up with, say, the fork. You could add spots to this. You can make it sort of very sort of abstract by crossing them over. It's very accidental and random. Doing right angles and diagonals. Some solid, some not so solid. And then just adding more using those other implements, just random, perhaps in a different colour. So once you've finished experimenting, then it's a chance to pick the sort of pattern that you want and to put it onto your final piece of fabric. So I'm suggesting here you could use these to make a table runner. And for a table runner, you're looking at a piece of that nice thick fabric that we spoke about in a natural fabric, natural thread. And then you just want it to be about 35 centimeters wide. That's once hemmed, and probably go for about 230 meters long, depending on your table length. You'll know how long your table is to know how long you need your piece of fabric. And now I like this because it's not going to be perfect. It is hand printing, but a couple of ways just to give yourself a chance is if you find the center just by folding, just making a crease, not too hard. You don't want to iron this because it will affect the print if it shows too much. You can just make a center line, and then you can use that as your guide, so you know that if you want a line of circles down the center, then to follow that pattern. So it's still not going to be perfect. This is hand printed fabric, but you're at least going to give yourself a chance to make it look sort of in the middle. So there we go. So what I would like you to do now is to pick your pattern, pick what you're going to be printing with, and I would love to see the results. So if you do give this activity a go, then please do take a photo, pop it in the comments, tag me at I Printed That and the Virtual Village Hall, and we'll be able to see them, and we always love to share your work as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope it's a little bit of printmaking that you feel you might be able to have a go at. So I will see you next time. So next month, you can use this fabric actually if you've printed it up, or you can use some scraps of fabric when we'll be turning them into little gift bags. So I look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Bye.